starting probably in next month, in May, my time allocation to Doge will drop significantly. I'll have to continue doing it for, I think, probably the remainder of the president's term, just to make sure that the waste and fraud that we stop does not come roaring back, which we'll do if it has the chance. So I think I'll continue to spend, a day or two per week on government matters for as long as the president would like me to do so.
A source telling the Washington Post that Musk is tired of dealing with what he views as nasty attacks from the political left.
Elon Musk is suddenly regretting getting all involved with politics and his promise to leave the day-to-day operations of Doge and go back to dedicating more time to Tesla, which might, I don't know, have something to do with a 71% dip in earnings in the first quarter since he joined the Trump administration. Hi, Mediaite founding editor Colby Hall, and it has been a tough week, month, 100 days for Elon Musk. Since he got involved with the MAGA movement and the Trump administration and Doge, he's become a super controversial figure. We've seen protests at Tesla, sales of Tesla have dipped, and his approval rating is remarkably low. In fact, lowest of anyone in the Trump administration, according to CNN's Harry Enten. So does he regret getting involved in these politics? He does, and he's removing himself. He's disappearing. Why this happened, how this happened, and what it says about the Trump administration moving forward is a conversation I had with Mediaite's Isaac Schorr. Joining me now is Mediaite staff writer, editor, and all-around fabulous contributor, Isaac Schorr. Isaac, thanks for joining me. How's it going?
Doing well. Thanks for having me, Colby.
So Elon Musk, big news broke last night where he sort of announced in his private call with JP Morgan that he was, stepping back from Doge and would be focusing more on Tesla in May. Now, this follows, he'd always planned to only be part of the Trump administration for 100, 130 days. So that seems sort of natural. But there's a lot of sort of speculation that given an earnings report that saw Tesla stock price crash and his approval rating being really, really low, do you think that Elon Musk sort of regrets the decision to get so engaged politically? Because it doesn't seem to have helped his wallet, at least short term.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to imagine he doesn't have some form of regret over his involvement. I think that probably buying Twitter a couple years ago, being very involved in the campaign actually was somewhat beneficial to him. I think he was able to escape a good amount of scrutiny while he was doing that, while also kind of putting together this new sort of political base that was really interested in what he had to say. I think that was probably really valuable for him. But once he entered the administration and he started to have an actual record that he could be held accountable for, I think that created a lot of problems for him. So I'm sure he regrets being involved in the administration to the extent he has been.
How much do you think, what is your sense? Because he's always been kind of a, what's the word? A pioneer, a thought leader. He's obviously a genius. He's a little weird, as a lot of geniuses are. I was never struck by the fact that he was sort of a megalomaniacal, that he really needed fame. Until recently, it seems like over the last 2 years, he really kind of caught the attention whore bug. And do you think that that's a fair assessment, or do you think he's just principled and he's just trying to truly be a First Amendment advocate and someone who is truly opposed to democratic, like big D democratic principles, Democratic Party principles, not, small d democratic principles?
I mean, I think it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, probably. I mean, I think he probably, just from my observation, I think he started on this train maybe a few years ago. And I actually had some hope at that point that he could be kind of a very powerful voice of reason within the Republican coalition. I didn't expect that, but I at least hoped that might come to pass.
Well,
I think he was.
didn't he used to self-identify as a libertarian more, and then it seems like he kind of pivoted, well, to a traditional Republican to now full-on MAGA guy.
Yeah, he is, and he's sort of a libertarian MAGA guy. He's kind of in that camp because he's kind of got the he's libertarian in that he wants, if a dime goes to Ukraine, it's the biggest disaster that's ever happened. So he's kind of like, yeah, I do think he has libertarian leanings ideologically. If you pinned him down, I don't think he's been speaking out on the tariffs as much as he might like to because he's part of the administration.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think he started off probably, you know, seeing what he viewed as kind of a vindictive kind of cancel culture and wokeness, and however he interpreted it, he saw that as a problem. I would agree that's a problem. Um, and then I think he kind of planted his flag. He got a lot of pushback. And I think from there, he just kind of self-radicalized. I think he got sucked into this kind of echo chamber. And I mean, a few years later, here we are, and turns out he's probably, the single biggest Mark IV and propagator of disinformation, um, probably that we can find.
Well, I mean, that to me is stunning because throughout the, following the 2020 campaign, the thing that we heard a ton on Fox News and conservative media was big tech. And the evidence of big tech censorship and shadow banning. It was tied to the Hunter Biden laptop coverage or lack of. And clearly at that time, Twitter was based in San Francisco. It seemed to be sort of run by left of center at best moderators. And it was a big talking point that social media was putting their thumbs on the scale. Enter Elon Musk, who ended up ripping apart the algorithm and basically he renamed Twitter X and making it sort of a cesspool of trolls and porn ads and racist tropes and really awful thing. And then, of course, he was the owner and he was promoting some of the most baseless, absurd conspiracy theories that, like, I would stop hanging out with someone that would promote stuff. Like it was like he didn't really care. He was just sort of shamelessly kind of trolling people. How do Elon fans square that apparent hypocrisy, right? Is it, well, it was you were just as bad, so we're going to do it worse. Like that seems to be a flawed sort of logic. Not that political logic is always airtight, but doesn't that seem like a sheer hypocrisy or a double standard?
I mean, absolutely, there's hypocrisy there. Absolutely. I mean, I think both sides have their own double standards for sure on these issues. I think what a lot of people would say, or at least I think maybe especially a year and a half ago, year ago, when he bought Twitter in the first place, I think a lot of people would have said, this is we have a serious problem with, censorship clamping down on conservative views. I agreed with that. Um, and, we need someone who's going to get in there and, it might be ugly. It's kind of the same argument we have about Donald Trump all the time.
Right.
We need someone who's willing to get his hands dirty, who's willing to do some maybe unsavory things, these principles that get in our way,
Be a Machiavellian.
of actually
Basically, the
making
end
progress.
justifies the mean. Do whatever it takes. You got to crack a few eggs to make an omelet type thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of that. I think there's a lot of that kind of.
What conservative views did you think were censored though under Twitter?
I mean, I think there was. I mean, most famously, probably the Hunter Biden laptop story. That was a big one, and it was right before an election. But we also had a lot of different COVID stuff that was also clamped down on. I mean, we had the lab leak theory. We had, the whole debate over masks. And I mean, I was pro COVID vaccine. I still am. But some of the clamping down on, any alternative viewpoint, I thought was a serious problem. And
Yeah.
even more than what I would say is more so than just the algorithms and particular social media companies clamping down on like a policy level. I would also say that Musk more broadly was kind of he was kind of a symbol of a pushback against a progressive culture of censorship and a progressive culture of, clamping down, punishing conservatives for their views. So I would say that was a lot of the animating force behind like the support for Musk.
Well, I mean, it feels like, I mean, one of the things he said was he didn't like he's going to remove himself from the political stage because he didn't like the nasty attacks by the left. Now, of course, there's been some terrible violence at against Tesla's, his showrooms. Obviously, firebombing Teslas is a terrible, terrible thing, and no one condones that. However, I'd said this on a TV hit that like it feels like the irony here is that he was the first to engage in a lot of like rhetorical attacks at a partisan level during the Trump campaign. And, he's sort of, I think my line was play stupid games, win stupid prizes. And so the fact that he's now wanting to disappear himself from the political spectrum because of the partisan attacks, isn't this a result of his own actions? Isn't he sort of like finding out after effing around?
I mean, there's certainly a case to be made for that, and I think there's a lot of merit to it. Now, would I say that generally speaking, would even if Musk had, stayed relatively on the straight and narrow, had, donated to the Trump campaign, or let's say Ron DeSantis was the nominee, donated to the DeSantis campaign, been outspoken, but been a much more reasonable voice, been not spread conspiracy theories, not attacked people in very personal terms, would he still have had a lot of blowback from the media? I would argue yes, he probably
Probably.
would. That was probably a hazard. That's a hazard of jumping into politics, no matter who you are. Although I think it's probably especially perilous if you're a conservative. Um,
Well,
but that being said, he is absolutely poured fuel on the fire with his personal behavior, which is I really have very little good to say about.
so the stock earnings or the earnings report for Q1 were down 71%. And to me, it seems kind of obvious why so many corporations and like even Jamie Dimon, right? He's like kind of dips his toe into politics, but you never really quite know where he stands because corporations and sort of top tier businessmen, influencers, moguls, they know that if you get really engaged in politics, you may appeal to 40% of the audience, but you're going to really anger another 40%. So it seems sort of strange that like, there's this theory that the reason why Musk got into the sort of Republican Party was that he saw that liberals sort of had bought all the Teslas and conservatives were not buying Teslas, and moving Tesla headquarters to Texas and be appealing to a Trump base would be a way to market his electric vehicles. I mean, he gave $100 million to the Trump campaign, and as a result, got a Tesla car ad on the White House lawn. With Sean Hannity and
Yeah.
Donald Trump. All that's just bizarre, and I just don't see Republicans buying Teslas in the way that he wanted. And it seems like that entire thing, that gambit backfired, right?
Yeah, I mean, if that was his motivation, I I don't know. Maybe he's not the business genius we thought he was. If that was his strategy, um, I mean, if this was, I can't imagine that this was motivated by business interests because if it was, I mean, it's just I don't know. I could have probably know very little. I probably could have told you it was going to backfire spectacularly.
Right.
Um, so I mean, I hadn't heard that theory, but if there's reporting on that, that
Well,
is wild.
I think it was one of those sort of like observations, like why is he suddenly getting involved? And I also know that there's this sort of kind of libertarian sort of Silicon Valley movement, kind of tech bro, the oligarch
Yeah.
theme,
Yeah.
by helping another billionaire get elected president who is really wants to cut taxes for the wealthy, would end up saving the Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos's, Zuckerberg's, Larry Ellison's, that lot, tons and tons of money. Ergo, and honestly, that feels a little Occam's razor to me. Like, well, of course that's that. The one other thing that I wanted to ask was this idea that during all the Doge cuts, which were very controversial, I mean, I maintain that a lot of people are for the cutting of government waste, right? I don't think that that's necessarily a partisan issue. Where it became partisan was
Mhm.
that Elon Musk and Doge did it in a way that was entirely extracurricular of constitutional policy, right? Like it just the Congress abrogated their responsibility and they just made cuts. Um,
Yeah.
it seems to me that as a result of that, Trump got the best of both worlds in that he got to cut costs, but he also got Elon Musk to be the front man for what was potentially a very controversial and unpopular policy. And in that way, Elon Musk became sort of a heat shield. Like Trump escaped a lot of criticism about, I mean, he got some criticism, but really the poster boy and the guy whose showrooms are being protested are Elon Musk. Do you think that do you think Trump is savvy enough to do that, or that just sort of fell in his lap?
That's an interesting question. I mean, 1,000% I agree with your analysis of how things have played out. I mean, Musk has absorbed, I would say, a lot more heat than Donald Trump has,
Right.
and has suffered a lot more personally and just image-wise in the early days of the Trump administration. So I would say, I would say it kind of probably did fall into his lap, but I think Trump probably recognized what was happening and was perfectly happy to go along with it. Whether that was like the best way to do things, I still have some doubts. I mean, there definitely was some political blowback on the administration in general, and I think what Musk's um, what Musk at Doge did was kind of add to this perception of chaos within the administration, which I think is really what's hurting him all around, right? I mean, people generally support him on a lot of what he's doing on immigration, right?
Right.
But some of the Abrego Garcia case, these flights that weren't halted despite a court order, all this adds to a perception of chaos within the administration. And if we remember back, that's really what sunk Joe Biden. And that's when his approval rating started to crater was during the Afghanistan withdrawal. Like this perception of incompetence, of chaos, that is just a political disaster waiting to happen. So, yes, Musk has absorbed a lot of the hits, but I would question whether, his involvement in the administration has really been such a boon to Trump.
I think that's a fair assessment, but it sort of begs this last final question. If Musk was catching a lot of heat for the Trump administration in the first 100 days, if he dips and sort of removes himself from, you know, I think he'll still be an advisor and will be called in whenever they need him or want him.
Mhm.
But if he's less a presence, will that hurt the Trump administration? Or I should say, does that mean that like he'll no longer take the heat and that will go to Trump? Do you think Trump's been getting a pass? And if without Elon Musk to sort of take the bulk of the criticism, that it will start to fall on Trump? Because things aren't going so well for the Trump administration right now.
Yeah, no, they're not. And I mean, I would agree with you. Like, kind of the Musk shield is, one less card he'll have to play if
Right.
Musk leaves. Um, but that being said, I mean, I think what's going to sink the Trump administration, if anything, are these tariffs. I mean, the longer there's uncertainty over the tariffs, the more economic problems there are going to be, the more market uncertainty there's going to be. And the damage is already immense, but it could get a lot worse. Yeah, I would say every passing day, it's going to get worse.
Right.
So Musk is kind of, in my view at least, faded from the headlines over the last month and a
100%.
half
Yeah.
already.
Mhm.
So I would say I don't know how much of an immediate political effect there's going to be right now. I would say the biggest problem for Trump is these tariffs, and I mean I don't maybe the damage maybe can come back from the damage, but I have pretty big questions about that.
I think you're right. I think, and part of the reason why Musk kind of went out of the spotlight was because of Liberation Day and this really poorly planned, rolled out tariff policy that appeared to really anger and upset almost everyone who isn't dedicated to or committed to framing everything Trump does in the only a glowing or positive light, which sadly, a lot of people in conservative media will frame anything negative as though it's just a necessary, sort of evil that will make things better. But I agree with you. Elon Musk aside, the tariff policy is going from very bad to, terribly worse day by day. And we saw signals of that changing yesterday, but it's just signals. It's not changing. So I agree.
Yeah.
Isaac, I appreciate you coming on. This has been fun. We should do this more often. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much, Colby.
Please click the like and subscribe button for more videos like this. I'm Mediaite founding editor Colby Hall. Thank you for watching.